Hi, everyone. This is Jason Neufeld with Elder Needs Law. I'm here today with Al Kushner, and I want to tell you about how what he does relates to what I do. As an elder law attorney, I do a lot of estate planning and Medicaid planning. And estate planning, we're all thinking about already what's going to happen to us and our stuff after we pass away. Well, something that we all have to hit upon that we may not like, that may be uncomfortable, is who's going to pay for what happens to us after we pass away, whether we want to be buried, whether we want to be cremated, whether we want to be shipped overseas, whatever the case might be. This is going to be an expense that someone is going to have to pay for at some point in time or another. And good, solid estate plan will have you getting this expense out of the way and not being a burden on your loved ones. On the Medicaid planning side, remember, that's where we're protecting people's assets to get the government to come in and help pay for their home health care, ALF care, nursing home needs. And so we're in the mode already of trying to get assets out of people's names. And again, it's always something I ask my clients: have you prepaid for your final, what you want to happen to your final remains, whether it's buried, whether it's cremated, because we want to get that stuff out of the way. So with that being said, we have an expert on the subject. We have Al Kushner. He is a financial educator. He's a retirement specialist. He's an author. He's a speaker. And we're here talking very specifically about a book that he wrote. And it's called The Savvy Guide to Buying Burial Insurance with Al Kushner. Al Kushner, you can see him online at www.savvyguide.tips. That's SAVVY guide.tips. Al, welcome. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you do. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks. Well, as you mentioned, I am a financial educator, a retirement specialist, speaker. And the book I wrote was actually during the pandemic about last year. I had plenty of time on my hands, which I guess a lot of people have.
Sure.
And I realized this topic was pretty timely, because of the fact that I've seen a lot of people who died from COVID and really are at a situation where they didn't realize that they need to cover expenses when paying for funeral. And it could be quite devastating to a lot of families. And they really need to have some options available. And I felt, having this book will make them have an informed decision on getting insurance if that's an option.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think the concept of insurance in general is intimidating to a lot of people. So I think the fact that you wrote a book like this, you kind of demystify what's going on with burial insurance. But I think, again, when people think insurance, they think of something that's complex. They think of something that they may or may not be able to qualify for. Talk a little bit about that, and talk a little bit also about the difference between burial insurance and the ability to just go direct to the source and prepay for your funeral with the funeral home. Kind of what's the difference? What's the practical differences between the two?
All right, well, we could start with that. A prepaid funeral plan is usually an arrangement between you and a funeral home. And you would provide them with a monthly payment for a burial. It could be a casket, a plot, whatever arrangements are needed at the time. And that usually ranges anywhere from, I would say, $7,000 to $15,000, depending on how many people are attending and other factors that you want, caskets, and what have you.
Sure.
And those are good in a way because it gives you a way to cover that expense when it does happen. At least those costs will be provided for. So that's the plus side of it. It's just something that would be between you and the funeral home.
Right.
The drawbacks, of course, is that if the funeral home goes out of business, then you're pretty much stuck. And a lot of times, even though it may not necessarily be the case, and also you may be tied into that funeral home, which if you have relatives and such from various parts of the country, it may not be convenient for them. And if you travel or if you're moving someplace, you still have to go back to the same source.
Right.
So that could be a bit of a problem for those who want to have the cost covered, but also know some of the drawbacks associated with that and keep that in mind. Compared to, let's say, a burial insurance policy where you would have, let's say, a monthly payments. But what's good about this is that if something happens in the first year or even the first month, you're covered from day one. And that payout will be directly to the beneficiary you designate. And that beneficiary can choose how and where and when they want to have the funeral and the home that they want to be selected to go with. So that's a lot more better in the long run, because it gives the beneficiary a choice, as opposed to prepaid where there is no choice. They have to go with what the loved one had decided at the time. So that's important to look at as
Makes a lot
consideration.
of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Can you tell me a little bit about how long, what's the underwriting process like? How long does it take to actually get one of these policies?
Well, a lot of times we can actually insure someone within 30 minutes or less. So there is no medical exam needed, unlike traditional life insurance, where someone comes to the home and gives you a blood test. And these are fairly small policies, ranging anywhere from 25,000 to 50,000 face amount. And the insurance company is aware of, the medical conditions. And most of the time, they usually will write to the doctors and get that information from them. They also take a note of the medications that you're taking. And but it's not necessarily a slam dunk. There are situations where the insurance will come in and deny people getting covered based on their health and pre-existing conditions. And that's where we come in. We examine a variety of different companies to see which one is best suited based on their health condition. So a lot of times people think, they wouldn't be able to get covered, and most of the time we can get them coverage. There's a policy that offer guaranteed issue policies, and that will provide a benefit. So very rare that we have somebody turned down, but there are situations where there could be some challenges that they face when applying for coverage.
One of the things I really loved about your book, again, The Savvy Guide to Buying Burial Insurance, is how you have individual chapters devoted to getting how to get burial insurance for people who have very specific conditions, whether it's after a heart attack, whether it's having cancer, or folks who have had blood clots, arthritis, people who are receiving home health care, people with chronic back pain, depression. I can't go through all of them because it would take us a long time, but you really are addressing people's concerns who have very specific conditions. And I think that's really important to highlight. So I think the other question that I think people would have when dealing with an insurance company, after someone has passed away, how long does it take for the beneficiary to get access to that money? Because, funerals need to happen in the short term. So are these policies paying out quickly?
Usually within 24 hours for the most part, 24 to 48 hours. I mean, all they need to do is provide a death certificate. They can contact with the agent, and they're pretty quick in turning around and cutting a check out. Again, all the insurance companies are regulated by the states that they're in, and they have usually a good reputation. So it's important to look at the company that you're going to be working with and find out, exactly their turnaround time. But for the most part, I've had good experience with most of the carriers that I've dealt with.
Terrific. All right. So if you could give us the quick and easy different types of burial insurance that you're typically looking at, or that people are most typically going to be interested in purchasing.
Well, I would say that these policies tend to be what we call permanent insurance. Unlike, let's say, term insurance, which expires usually at age 70, this will continue up to age 100. So at that point, they'll usually pay out the death benefit. But what's good about it is that the premiums will never change. They won't increase. Once you get the coverage, you're locked in at the rate itself. So obviously, the younger you are and the healthier you are, the more advantage of getting the lowest cost available. And that's important to do that because you'll always have that available for you. And that's just a peace of mind, knowing that you have this taken care of. And if situation changes down the road, you need to change a beneficiary, that's available as an option. Things happen, children may die, and, the parents may have other beneficiaries want to leave it to. Sometimes people also leave it to charities. They leave a certain portion of it to cover, as a gift. Right. So there are advantages in doing that.
Yeah, a lot of estate planning options, and I think you hit on a really excellent point, which is the premiums never change. And you and I are both tangentially in the long-term care world as well, and those famously have policies where the premium can go up quite high. So with burial insurance, you're buying a policy, you know exactly what you're going to be paying every month for a certain period of time, and it is going to pay out no matter what. Whether you live to be 100 or you pass away before then, someone is going to be benefiting from this insurance. It is unlike term insurance where it could be wasted premiums because they expire. So I think that's great. Yeah, I think that this is really important stuff and people don't like to think about it, but as part of everyone's estate plan, or if you're dealing with an elder law attorney in a Medicaid planning context, you got to be thinking about burial arrangements, whether it's for yourself or whether it's for loved ones. So Al, I want to give you an opportunity. If there's anything else that you want to talk about or say, I want to give you an opportunity to do so. Go ahead.
Yeah, be aware of companies that, let's say, are selling direct, like through the mail. A lot of times those companies will offer very low ball rates and such, but with limitations. A lot of times there'll be, for example, waiting periods, sometimes a 2-year waiting period before they actually get benefit based on their health condition. So that's important to note. You need to really, you get what you pay for when you go without an agent. So it's important to look for some agent that's independent, that would represent at least 15 to 20 companies and able to work with you to get the lowest cost based on your health. And even if you're in perfect health with no medications, you could still get a great rate with someone who's independent. And that would be what I would look for when considering that coverage, and try to get it while you're in good health and while you're young, because delaying these things is just going to be inevitable. And with the pandemic, I mean, things can happen at any moment, right? And you're going to be in a situation where it could be pretty devastating. A lot of people turn to sites like GoFundMe or what have you, just to raise funds for funerals. You can see that all the time,
right?
And it's a growing trend. And most of the time, they never get a lot of help. So you don't want to be in that situation. You got to really.
Truism for life, I think, is, waiting longer hardly ever makes things cheaper or easier. So planning in advance is always going to be to your advantage. Yeah. Al Kushner, the book is The Savvy Guide to Buying Burial Insurance, and his website is www.savvyguide.tips. That's savvyguide.tips. And I'm going to put Al's contact information in the website and a link to his book in the show notes down below. If you click on the YouTube link. And Al, thank you very much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. And I look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Thank you.